I come from our newsroom with breaking news. This just in, the audience is in charge now. And Joe alluded to what I'm going to talk about today, and I hope that there are lessons for any traditional company or anyone working with a traditional company as a client on how to make that transition from the analog to the digital world, how to take success in our traditional business and convert it to digital opportunities. And that's been a real challenge, as Joe alluded to. At KGW, we're used to being the TV station of record here in Portland and having success on that one screen, but for us to have a future like our past, it was all about getting onto more screens and more platforms with the news. So I'm going to share what we think we've learned and start with a story. Once upon a time, there were 3 choices for news: radio, TV, and newspaper. And if you turned on your TV, some of us remember there were only 3 choices of channels. And the 3 networks carved up the audience happily. On an average day, everybody gets a third, everybody's happy. Supper was always ready when you got home, on the table, and the family gathered around their television, and life was good. And the business model for TV was we connected audiences with advertisers by creating programming that attracted audiences that advertisers wanted to be in front of. And things went great. And everyone lived happily ever after. Thank you for coming. And then Al Gore invented the internet. And this web extended around the world. Oh, and then we added 50 other channels into the mix. And 50 became 500. And the web pulled people in. And they got to engage with each other. They were no longer passive. They were no longer couch potatoes. This was not good if you define your business model as we create the content and you sit there and like it. So our challenge as a television station that had been successful in the old world was how to convert from being just a TV station to being a media group. And we like to say we think we've learned, because in social and digital media, who's really an expert? So what we think we've learned, 3 lessons for us that I'm going to share with you today. And the first and foremost is, as a traditional company, you need to be able to define your business so that it has a future. We had a great past, but how do we define ourselves to have a future? And if you've heard the term Gutenberg economics, you know, when the costs of production, operating a TV station, having a radio station, printing a newspaper, when the costs of production are high, it creates 2 tiers. There are the content creators, the professionals, that was us. And then there's the audience who sits there and receives, because it just costs way too much for everybody to play. And that was the old business model. Anybody heard of Yelp? The value of experts has been totally transformed, of course, by digital technology. You don't want to be a professional food critic or movie reviewer in the era of Yelp and peer review ratings, right? It has completely changed what we think being an expert means. How many of you remember travel agents? Travel agents. I used to call a travel agent. In the digital world, we're all travel agents. So you don't want to be defining your expertise in a way that gets eliminated by technology. And, you know, the all-time example for me is in the transition from horse-drawn carriages, as the automobile is being introduced, you don't want to be convinced that you're in the buggy whip business when, in fact, what you need to be thinking about is that you're in the transportation business. And that was the fundamental challenge that we faced at KGW. And my favorite book on this topic, Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, gets into these issues of what happens if you are a traditionally successful company facing disruptive innovation. And you really have to transform your business model and how you think of the way you operate, which is its own worthy session. But let's say for us, the fundamental change was broadening our thinking to viewing ourselves as a media group rather than just a TV station, meaning that we're on many screens, web, mobile, many platforms, social, as well as broadcast. And then it starts at the top. I have to say, for us, the secret was one word: leadership. Our general manager, DJ Wilson, was the one who started using the term media group, KGW Media Group. It started there, permeated the organization, and even down to the letterhead. The bottom of that screen is on every email we send, every piece of letterhead that goes out. I was reading some of the tweets this morning, and somebody made a great comment, which is having a Facebook page and a Twitter account does not make a social media strategy. Putting media group on the bottom of your letterhead does not make you a digitally forward-thinking company. On the other hand, it's a good representation of how you have to immerse yourself from top to bottom when you remake your organization. The other half is you have to do what you say. You have to walk your talk. And so we got into mobile. Joe talked about the time when we wondered whether our website would make it. I think we can say our website made it. Now we're into the iPad and tablet formats. We're very aggressive in social media as a two-way conversation, not as a broadcast platform where we talk at the audience. And so for us, the multi-screen, multi-platform conversion was really the starting point, and nothing else could happen until we reinvented how we defined ourselves. So that was the first lesson. The second one for us was we had to follow our customer, go where they were going, and take their lead in how they wanted us to relate to them in those new spaces. I'll admit, Joe talked about this, we've had some pride in our professionalism. Don't try this at home. We're the journalists. You wait till 5 o'clock, we'll tell you what the news is. That's the old model, and we know that doesn't work anymore. We would prefer, like Cartman, to say that you should respect our authority. But we know that that doesn't work. So, quick question. What time does the 5 o'clock news air? 4:58. Who said 4:58? I love it. That's product awareness. 5 o'clock, right? Okay. More important question. When does news happen? Yeah. That's a problem for us because the audience figured out they didn't have to wait till 5 o'clock to get the news. They started getting the news when they wanted it, where they wanted to get it. 24/7 access. And they didn't need to get it from us if they could get it somewhere else. Bottom line, for us, there's a new sheriff in town, and it's you. And really, you are in charge of the information flow now. And that, as a legacy company, is a tough pill to swallow, but it's fundamental to our transformation to recognize we need to go to the places where the audience is going and be there with our news and information. Because you're just not going to sit and take it anymore. I mean, that's the clear lesson of two-way media. Pew has done tracking on how we get our news forever. And when you look at the numbers, all legacy media lines go down as the internet goes up. In fact, among TV, the only line that hasn't gone down is local TV news. So that's the reality of the world around us. And what are people doing instead? Instead of a feast in the morning when you get up and read the paper for half an hour, or a feast of news in the evening, watching the evening news, we're all news snackers now. A little here, a little there. We get some news on Yahoo, right? I see lots of heads nodding. This is the way we consume now. It's a very different way of getting the news. And honestly, what I observe is we kind of expect the real news. If it matters, the news should find me. I can't tell you what a huge reversal of model that is for us as broadcasters, where we figure we decide the news, we tell you the news, you wait to hear it from us. What we've learned is we have to go find you wherever you are and give you the news. You don't expect to have to go get it. So Jay Rosen had the great line, I love this, the people formerly known as the audience. And that shift is what has driven all of our new initiatives in the digital space the last 3 years. Because people won't just take the news, they want to participate now. They want to comment on the news, they want to create the news, blogging, submitting, taking photos. And so for us, that's meant if we're going to follow the customer, we can't just go to the spaces where they are, but we have to abide by the rules of engagement in those spaces that are different. They're not broadcast, receive. They're not professional, amateur. It's a two-way street. So it is shocking to me that on our Facebook page, when Osama bin Laden was killed, the second place that I published that news after getting a quick story onto the website was I put it on our Facebook fan page. If you had told me that 2 years ago, I would have never believed you, but here's why that made sense. This is news that happened on a Sunday evening. No newscasts were really on the air. It's not a time people are consuming news. It is, qualitatively, end of the weekend, people are in social media, they're comparing, hey, what'd you do this weekend? They're uploading their fun photos. That's where people are. The percent of people who found out about Osama bin Laden in social media was extraordinary. And so again, what we learned, you have to follow the customer, be where they are to get the news to them. And a lot of the reason we're on Twitter, and we were the first TV station to get on Twitter and still have the most following in the local market, it wasn't to shove our news stories at, well, okay, initially it was shamefully just to push more broadcasting. The transformation is now it's a listening as well, and we discover news, as Joe mentioned before, all the time. The other big shift is treating the content creation as a relationship that's two-way rather than one-way. Thinking of ourselves as curators rather than only curators, because the audience has demonstrated their ability en masse to often create better or more unique content than we can. And then if you're going to follow the audience where they are, the biggest trend we're seeing in our industry is the shift to mobile. So you have to be in that space. This is what we've seen in the shift in news consumption behavior online in the past 2 years. In 2009, 96% of our traffic came through our website for news and information, 4% on mobile. Quadrupled the next year, and it's of course always true to, it's easy to get 400% growth when it's a small number, but more than doubled to January of this year. We are projecting that within a year, half of our traffic could come through a mobile device. That's a huge transformation in how people experience the news. And then what does that do? How do you change the way you do business if that's what your audience is telling you they want to do? And so for us, one of the biggest initiatives was to push heavily into mobile and have this 3-screen strategy. We've had a website since 1998. But mobile for us is really where it's at, the idea of anytime, anywhere. So if you want to get your news here while you're here, we now will push you alerts, if you want, to your phone. We launched a mobile news app a year ago. Sounds like a week ago, November 11th. That should be November 10th. And we're up to 100,000 page views on a good day on the app, 57,000 downloads, with all of our local news, weather, and traffic on it. But then our phase 2 initiative was to develop a series of niche apps. We now have a total of 7 mobile apps from KGW that are all free. Portland Weather uses all of the great resources of our meteorology team and the graphics that we have access to at the TV station, migrated onto mobile with geolocation, so it's weather where you are right now. My favorite app of ours that I use every morning on my commute, Portland Traffic. We've got ODOT cams, Google route mapping, incident reports. You can even look up, where's the cheap gas near me? Again, geolocation-based, very useful. And for me, the most important part is, as a TV station, we might do traffic, maybe in the morning, maybe at 5 o'clock, but that's not a core competency necessarily. On the website, we have traffic. It's okay. It's fine. In the mobile space, offering real-time, on-the-go traffic in your pocket, that's a real value that's specific to that platform. So again, for us, a big shift was recognizing how to be platform-aware and platform-specific. And the other thing I want to point out, when you look at this, those of you who had involved in television or other big branding companies may appreciate the revolutionary thing about the names of 2 of these 3. Anybody notice something missing, so to speak? It's called Portland Weather and Portland Traffic. And I think DJ Wilson is here. I would have to acknowledge Brenda Brady, our creative services director, our news director, Rod Grammer, and DJ supported, and I thought this was a revolutionary moment for us, that we launched apps that weren't called KGW something, that we recognized that the audience for Portland traffic was probably bigger than the audience for KGW traffic. but the audience for Portland weather was bigger than the audience for KGW weather. And so it's really huge to recognize, if we're in the local news and information business, name it what you want to name it in the space where it's going to be found. And so in the App Store, if you look, if I go forward instead of backwards, if you look, our apps are #1 in both of those niches in the App Store. And that's a testament to thinking about the customer rather than thinking about our branding and how can we push KGW. And so the last area of going mobile for us that's been a crucial focus is, if you want to not only follow the customer, but lead in the spaces where they're going to be going to, tablets are the next great thing. I love my iPad, I'll admit it. And so my favorite project of the summer was working on our iPad app, which we launched in August. And again, the idea is to make the platform appropriate for users of that platform, not to replicate our website, not to replicate our newscast, not to replicate our mobile app, but think, what should a tablet do, and how is a tablet different from other formats? And so with that, and all the drama that goes with live presentations, we will attempt to show you the KGW News iPad app. And look at that. News, weather, entertainment, sports, the things you'd expect. But in a tablet, imagery and video, so convenient, so portable. So we have photographs, video, and you can watch our newscasts live on your tablet. And I have to say, Joe was talking about the Occupy Portland coverage. I was watching our coverage on my iPad app while I was writing stories for the website and tweeting. And it was so wonderful to have all my little screens going. News on the go, in a format that actually is the best of the old newspaper gone digital. So Occupy is the lead story today. The kinds of things that you want as a user. Oh, you know, so are you in the reading glasses crowd? Just like that, adjustable size, I love that. We have all of our video reporting integrated right into the story. Real-time launch, looks great. Poor Art, I'm gonna close him, but you can consume on demand, on your terms, the stories you want, and then the kind of behavior that a user of a tablet expects. The magic of the finger, swiping through the news. I read twice as much news on the tablet as I do on my typical news website that I go to. Weather, we know, is a huge local value that we offer because of the strength of our weather team. You know, wondering what it's going to be like later today? 43, mostly sunny. What are we doing in here? How about the 7-day? We know it's December. It'll start raining soon, right? So all of the investment that we've made in our other platforms in weather, but also the interactivity and localization, location awareness you'd expect in something digital. So here's hyperlocal, interactive, real-time radar located to wherever you are in the world. And if you want a window on the world, take a look outside. It's a good day to, you know, if you're in a presentation and you're thinking, I wish I were outside instead of listening to somebody talk about digital media. Yeah, what does it look like in Astoria? And for us, video, obviously, is one of our huge value propositions. And so to be able to offer that on the tablet, where you can be in charge, you decide what content you want to consume, when you want to consume it. We had crazy weather the last couple mornings. The ability to go full screen, I mean, this is a terrific user experience, I think. And sampling the other stories that we have. So for us, the tablet is a vital place to begin to explore. And also, it's essential when we move into a new space to recognize what's different and unique about that platform and design for it. So pretty excited about our iPad app. These are all works in progress, and we continue to add things. But you know, it's become an important part of our digital portfolio. So following the audience, in some cases, hopefully leading a little bit, is the second thing we've learned. The third and most important of all is the power, as a former broadcast only, we talk, send, no listening, is what can happen when you not only engage, but listen. And what happens for us is learning. And so we got into these social spaces, I'll admit, from a corporate media standpoint, a little reluctantly. I love this cartoon. You know, there is, without question, in the mainstream media, a sort of default disrespect for the audience. I think that's true. And so blogging was mocked in the beginning. I don't know if anybody's seen this one, but I love this. You know, that whole, if you ever try to pitch social media and resourcing social media in a meeting, I'm seeing the journalist head nodding. You know, this is what you get. Like, oh, you know, what did I get? I ordered a latte. Is that what they're tweeting about? This is what I think any mainstream organization is up against when you try to tell the story of why we need to be in this space. And, you know, here's another great example I get asked all the time. Why do I care what people are having for lunch? The J. Crumbs, you know, here's a classic. He's at the beach. He gets a couple of cans, angles them together, takes a photo, uploads it to his Facebook profile page. Pretty funny. Oh, you know, beer, love at first sight, right? Silly, waste of time. Why do we want to be listening to these people? Well, because that same J. Crumbs on another day might be on a ferry and take the photograph of the plane that went into the Hudson River. The money shot of the biggest news story of that month in the country. That's why we have realized we have to listen to the audience and what we can learn when we start listening and treating them as an equal participant. So this is the old news cycle. You get up in the morning, I'll admit, this is the TV news cycle. You get up in the morning and read the paper to get news ideas. You go to the morning meeting. You get your assignment, make some calls, grab your photo, get out the door, do an interview, take your notes, come back, write up your story, get it edited, boom, air on the evening news, go home, rinse, repeat. That's been the cycle forever in traditional media. This is the model we're trying to follow today. News as a conversation that begins with the audience at the very start of the day. Trending topics, what are people talking about? Scanning Twitter, getting feedback, finding out not only what they're talking about, but what's their point of view, what are their questions, what are they worked up over. That informs the morning meeting. We'll post on Facebook, here are some of the stories we're looking at. That gets us more focus. I want to know, someone writes in, that becomes part of the reporter's arsenal for when they go to do the interviews. When we ask people their comments on the news of the day, those get fed back on air. This is an example from one of our sister stations in Phoenix, where they used trending topics, even though they weren't being hit by the hurricanes. In their community, lots of people had relatives they learned from Twitter. And so they built that into their flow, asked on Facebook, has anybody got somebody affected, got that content, share it on air, put up an interactive map online, share through your social media, and then instead of ending, the arrow goes right back up, and it's a continuous circle. That's a really transformational way for us to do our business. So one of the huge pieces of these social platforms for us is the pulse of the people. On the left is one of the early returns on Occupy. It's been a huge story for us, but getting a sense of what the audience is interested in, what are their questions, what are their concerns, this has become part of our daily editorial meeting, informing what angles we take on the story, who we talk to, how we flesh out the story. Another way we use Twitter is to discover the news, whether it's, hey, cops in my neighborhood, which is a fairly mundane example. This other one I love. We had the top story of the day for a couple days had been hikers from Portland lost, trapped in a slot canyon in Utah by a freak snowstorm. And we got the first word secondhand that they had been rescued. And we published the story that they were okay, they were alive. I went and put that on Facebook because so many people had been following it, and it was going to be hours before the news came on at 5 o'clock. And who posts on our Facebook page? The guy from Utah with his phone posts on our Facebook page his first account of how he's doing. I wind up corresponding with him through Facebook. I interview him through Facebook. That reporting winds up on the website and on our evening newscast. All that happened through social media. We would never have had that story otherwise. Back to that fantastic comment earlier about having a Facebook page doesn't constitute a social media strategy. Regardless of your politics, I think this slide says it all. Just broadcasting your news on another platform doesn't make you a listener. This doesn't work. You have to listen. And so while it has not been in our culture, it is the thing that we're trying to do better. And Joe gave some examples of the kind of value we have found from listening to the audience, engaging with them, and it's our primary metric for Facebook. Actually, if you look in the Facebook Insights metrics, people are talking. is the newest version of this metric, and it's the total engagement you have, how many comments, likes, and shares. That is our metric for how we're doing in Facebook. Are we putting things on there that people are engaging with? And when they engage with us, are we responding back? And some of the benefits we've seen is closing the loop. Broadcast has always been, we talk, the audience sits and passively receives. The ability to build the audience voice into the newscast. So we'll ask people what they think. We'll let them know what stories we're doing. Sometimes they are the ones who generate the story we're doing. We ask for their feedback, and then when you watch at 5, you're seeing what people have to say and giving them a voice in the conversation. This is another great example where the audience shapes the coverage in a way that improves our product. So that TSA, the poor little boy who got overly frisked by the TSA, this is, again, one of our sister stations. They noticed on Facebook how the video went viral. So that was the first point of learning, is they really discovered how newsworthy it was by the social reaction. They lined up an interview with the TSA agent and then let their audience know through Facebook, we've got this interview today, what do you want us to ask him? And then the content of the story was that agent being asked to respond to their audience's questions. That is news as a social conversation. So I know marketing is so we're in Facebook for marketing too. We do all the obvious things. We know that Facebook is a powerful driver of traffic back to our website. We see great value in that. I mean, the New York Times has people discovering their news via Facebook. We love the fact that this turns our true fans into marketers of our content. We look for stories, specifically the stories we share on Facebook are shareable news stories, the kind of things you would want to share with other people. So the friends of our fans are a huge target opportunity for us. We are trying to get on Facebook in front of people who may not ever watch KGW News. Maybe they wouldn't traditionally go to kgw.com, but they can trust their friends who have nominated something that we may have put into that space. And so the sharing feature is huge for us. And frankly, it's a way to get better real-time dialogue. We host the debates. All the big debates are co-hosted with the Oregonian and KGW. And in real time, we had people submitting during the debate questions on Facebook, which were then posed to the candidates. So breaking down that wall and really enabling the audience to have a voice in the process. And let's be honest, we want to make money too. There's nothing wrong with that. And so we're proud to say that we've been able to use some of the oldest models of TV, of connecting advertisers and audience where there's mutual benefit, with our social marketing. So whether it's discount tickets to the auto show or giving away a $6,000 kitchen, we have been able to monetize our social reach, the number of fans that we have as a TV station, and help clients who, like us, maybe have had a traditional business and are trying to get into this new space. There's a real value for them to access our fans. And so we've actually seen that when it's a win-win for both the audience and the client, we can monetize our social reach. Twitter, same idea. We know that not everybody's going to watch the news in the future. We want to go where people who care about news are, and that's Twitter. Sure, we get link backs. It does drive traffic. But the more important thing is that it reaches an audience in that space where they want to get their news right now and certainly not wait till 5 o'clock. And it also reinforces our news brand across platform. Frankly, some of these spaces, even if we didn't want to be in, we have to because everyone else is in there. And so it comes down to being aware of how you need to interact in the platform and responding, not just publishing. So we get all kinds of values back from our Twitter existence. Our audience catches mistakes. I don't know, is anybody here has ever been interviewed for a newspaper article? And then you read the article afterwards. Honestly, it's pretty frustrating. First of all, it points out how hard journalism actually is, even for the professionals. But if parts of that weren't right and you pursued getting that corrected, where would the correction show up and when? 3 days later, page 10? Personally, I love the fact that while we're not perfect, we're trying to be as perfect as we can. And so the real-time reality check we get from Twitter in particular is invaluable. If we listen, the audience will help us do our job better. So we get that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's not you spelled this word wrong. Sometimes it's you need to talk to this geologist who has better information. So we really get great leads that way. We also get coached by our audience about how to do our jobs better. Joe was giving a couple examples. We had a couple weeks ago when Occupy was kicked out of the parks. Saturday Night Live was 30 minutes away when that was happening. And Twitter blew up with folks telling us online, hey, it's an NBC show. The only place I can watch that is on, as we call it, the mothership, KGW. You have all these other screens and platforms, and we know how to use them. You should go put your Occupy coverage over there. And we got a lot of that feedback. Fast forward 16 hours, and it's Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock. NBC's Sunday Night Football is one of the most popular programs of the week, and certainly the most popular sports program we have. Occupy was on the move, walking through Portland. It was not an unimportant story. We had our main anchor team on the set, reporters in the field doing live coverage. And for the first time ever, we migrated our local news coverage onto the other screens, 24/7, web live streaming, mobile live streaming, tablet live streaming. And we switched on air to network, which is the only place people could see the game. And it was fascinating to see how the audience nimbly moved, who wanted the Occupy coverage, and the positive response we got in social media. So absolutely for us, lesson number 3 is the power of listening to the audience. And last example I'll give you, for us, social media is a chance to show that we get it, you know, that we make a big deal out of the weather when here comes the big blizzard. So we put, like last year, this time, we put up, hey, you know, we got the big storm coming, what should we call it? And we got all these great names, ideas. So we went to our graphics department and actually had them make up graphics for the best 3 and then had people vote on Facebook, which I thought was fantastic. And more than anything else, it's made us more responsive to our customer. If you're willing to listen, the audience will tell you how to do your job better. So for us, while it's a journey that's still in progress, we think we've learned a lot by changing our business model from one-way push to a two-way conversation, because it really is a new world where we don't get to be the only journalists anymore, and that's actually looking okay these days. So I'll just leave you with what we think we've learned is that to be successful in the digital space requires multi-platform literacy, meaning be aware of the differences of each of the spaces that you're in and tailor your message to what works in the space. Thank you very much.
All right, we have a couple of questions here, and I'll start out with the first one here. So there was a question about wanting to hear more about the KGW mobile app and how you developed that. And you follow your customers, so what did you find out basically via research and discovery? And they want to know which agency developed the app.
Yeah. The Frank Mungeam agency. We partnered with Do Apps, which is a third-party vendor who offers the structural piece. And for us, that was a big deal. We have tons, as a local news organization, what we have that a lot of other companies don't have to that degree is a massive amount of content that we're already creating. And so their architecture behind the scenes really enabled us, just through RSS feeds, to build apps very quickly. And for us, that's a lot of it is in the mobile space. Time is money, and we couldn't afford to be waiting 9 months to develop something. By the time you get that developed, you've missed that train. And so really, our turnaround time, I can build an app in a week, and we've been doing that. And that has enabled us, so we now have 7 local niche apps. And so the answer to the half of that question, I mean, how we got that is feedback from the audience, both on Twitter, Facebook, old school, emailing us, say, you know what I'd love, or even looking at our metrics. When we launched the first news app, I'm guilty in hindsight, I put the kitchen sink in there. It has too many feeds. But through the metrics, we were then able to look and see what people were actually consuming. And way off on the far end, honestly, in a lot of this build something you would use, and maybe 5 other people will like it too. I went and put all this ski report stuff on the back end of our news app, way off in the corner, pretty much so that I could, use it and a few of my friends. And that got all these page views from people who just found it, even though we never promoted it. So 2 weeks ago, we launched Oregon Ski Report, which is our latest free app that's just nothing but hyper-specific, live radar over Mount Hood. Here's the cams for the pass. Here's the resort conditions. So really, once we get in the space, kind of fail fast, get in the space, see how people use it, revise quickly has been the key.
Someone else asked, Frank, how do you maintain journalistic integrity in an instant access world?
Winner, boy, great question. I mean,
what is journalistic integrity? What is that?
Somebody was sitting in our staff meeting last week who wrote that. It is the most difficult challenge we face. Literally just had this conversation with our digital team, and what I said at that meeting was, in a world where everybody can perform an act of journalism at any time, the only thing that separates us is our ability to be excellent at it, not average. And so as much as we want to be fast and we want to be first, and KGW is where the news comes first, pretty much our stand is if we have to choose between first and accurate, we have to let someone else be first. Because over time, if we try to always be first and are sloppy about it, we will lose the only thing left that distinguishes us from the average citizen journalist, and that's that ethic of accuracy. So for us, it's the foundation of what we do, and it is very difficult when the other guys are tweeting and you're feeling those competitive pressures. But at the end of the day, I think most people will stay with a news organization that they really trust to be accurate, because speed can be overrated sometimes.
Another one that came in was, how do we keep in-depth news coverage in a world where the main course is news bites?
Boy, love these. It's a problem. Honestly, my answer is get an iPad and download a news app. I truly believe that the tablet format will restore long-form content consumption. A mobile device is a snacking device. That's not our fault. It's device-based. You have to understand the nature of the device. This is a lousy place to read an 80-graph story, right? I mean, you'd go blind. I have lots of metrics and some early Pew research that shows that people, as they get the iPad, go back to a more newspaper style of depth consumption, that it's the longest user session for news consumption of any of these platforms. It's a great user experience. My preferred way to read our news is on my iPad, actually, more so than our website. So I think that actually the next level of technology, as tablets become more pervasive, will move us away from this kind of, you'll still snack here, but the tablet will result in an audience, a market for longer form journalism.
This is an ongoing thing for television as well, and I would argue that people are hungry for a longer form of news. And I think hopefully that this will help us, this, development online will allow us to sort of spread our wings more. Because what happens is our attention spans have gotten so short that the news stories have to be, we think, 20 seconds in order to keep people's attention. But I would argue that people want to invest more time in a story that's worth watching. Because our daily dilemma is, okay, do we have 4 or 5 of these 15 or 20-second stories that, quite frankly, I'm not sure anyone would even remember an hour from now or 2 hours from now, or invested in a 2 or 3 minute story afterwards you say, wow, that was really interesting. So that's an ongoing struggle for us on the TV side too.
And honestly, this is another example of the power of social media and the two-way conversation. Is every week in our editorial meetings now, there are conversations migrated from social feedback into the daily editorial process, where we talk about 2 aspects of story selection. Telling more good news, because you are telling us, you really mean it, that you want to see more than just car crashes and crime. And then the other thing is telling us that you want depth and context. And our 4 o'clock show, which is the new newscast we recently launched, has specifically as part of its mission to tell those longer form stories that are the kind of stories you feel good about sharing. And honestly, that's actually usually where I pull my shareable news story of the day, is from that newscast. Right. And the feedback on Facebook has been unbelievable. So I think that we're getting coached up by the audience to deliver the kind of news that people want.
We just have a minute or so left. If you didn't get to send a question in on Twitter, does anyone have a quick question they wanted to ask in the audience? Yes?
I should have. I mean, shame on me for failing to point out town and country advertisers. So we've already got one of our niche apps sponsored, the traffic app.
How do you make them pay?
And what we're seeing, actually, and I would think many of you have had this experience as you work with clients, is we have a whole bunch of clients that we've served as a TV station. These are large advertisers. They're comfortable with the old media. We're comfortable in that space. They know they need to be in the new spaces. For those of you who are here for the morning mobile monetizing session, people are showing up at car lots with a phone in their hand looking at cars.com while they're shopping for cars. So I can assure you that our advertisers who are car dealers are telling us we need to get into that space. So actually what we're finding is these screens are in some ways an easier sell because people realize they need, businesses recognize they've got to start getting, as we have, into the spaces where their customers are.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you.